Well, my presentation is about living in rural areas in Pinellas County. That's what my presentation is going to be based on. I want my audience to realize that there have been many changes in Pinellas County since I've been a resident of Pinellas County. And even though we've made a lot of progress, there's a lot more to be made. That's what I like the audience to take with them. It's important that they realize that during that era, we had small communities where communities help each other. And that seems to be something that's lost now, and I just feeling that we should go back to that, where it takes a community to raise a child. And by documenting this, it tells us how things used to be. I'm honored to have the opportunity to share what knowledge I know about the rural areas in Pinellas County, being a native of Pinellas County.
Good afternoon. I bring you greetings for the Pinellas County Historical Society. We're so glad you're here, that you're supporting our programs, and we want to remind you that anything else that if you would like to make donations or join our Historical Society, we'd love to have you. We are busy keeping Heritage Village alive and open. And we also have a gift shop that is open this afternoon over across the bridge, in case you want to stop there. We are continuing our series on Speaking of History. So it's my pleasure now to introduce to you a man who was born on January 30th, 1944 in Pinellas County. And a lot of folks that maybe even go back that far probably weren't born here. So he's got a lot to tell you, because the place he was born is certainly not the place that Pinellas County is today. So we'd like to welcome Willie Tellis.
Thank you very much. I'll be signing the autographs at the door when I walk out. It's a pleasure to be here, I think. When I was asked to do this, I think I answered too fast. I said, yeah, I'll do it. Then after I'd done it and I thought about it and I talked to my wife a bit, I said, why did I do that? But I'd like to introduce some of the family that's here right now. Here's a sister right here, one of my sisters, Mary. My sister, Mary. My brother, David. And I was hoping my oldest sister would be here, and my youngest brother, but their work tied up. And most of all, and that's my brother-in-law right here, that's married to Mary. Here's some of the siblings. And my gorgeous wife, Joanne, for 42 years. 42 years. I also have some relatives sitting on the back row back there. Looks right there, all family. And my extended family, all the Taylors raise their hand. All right, all the Taylors family raise their hand. That's our extended family. That is our extended family, and we'll get into that as I talk a bit. As was stated, I was born in Baskin Crossing, what it was called then, January the 30th, 1944. My grandmama midwifed us in. We didn't go to hospitals. Hospitals weren't available back then. My oldest sister was midwifed by my grandma. My oldest brother, who's no longer with us, was midwifed by my grandma. And I was the last. All the rest of them went to Morton Platte Hospital. Total of 8 siblings, 4 boys and 4 girls. Times were tough back then. My dad, and my mom, they were strong-willed people. They didn't let anything stop them from meeting their goals. My grandpa owned property in Baskin, where we grew up. There were other pioneers out there. To think of a few: the Henrys, the Bills, the Goodens. Oh, and there were many more. But those houses were spotted all through this area over here, the Ridgecrest area as you know it now. There were only two communities at that time. It was Dansville and Baskin. Thank you, baby. My sister and Baskin. It looked just like, you know how you guys drive up and see all the parameters, the pine trees and the oak trees? That's what that community consists of. So we had trails through the parameters. Everybody knew everybody. If you messed up, you got a... Child abuse don't even exist back then. Kids don't know what child abuse is. You got a whipping out there, and when you got home, you got one for messing up, because everybody knew everybody. They say, I know your mama. My grandfather told my dad that his days were numbered, so he gave the properties to my dad, which we still own property on Ridge Road now. My father gave every one of us a piece of property from the property that our grandfather gave him. So he was always looking out for the family provider. And back in those days, my dad would come home, he would tell the story that sometime he'd make $2 a day. $2 for working all day. Back in those days, we didn't have electricity. We didn't have plumbing. And we didn't have running water. We get an old pump with a pipe on it and stick it down in the ground and pump water. Thank God for a high water table. We didn't have to go for it. We didn't have a refrigerator as we know. We had what was called an ice box. The ice truck would come through the neighborhood twice a week, and we'd chip off a quarter, it'd come in 100-pound cubes. He'd chip off 25 pounds. We put it in an ice box. That's how we stored our food. Short of that, the food that was we raised in our garden, we'd can. You know the mason jars? And y'all know mason jars? We can our own foods that would sustain us through the hard times. My grandmama always had a garden. Oh, how I love sweet potatoes. You can eat them raw, y'all, just in case y'all don't know. They taste good. Collard greens. We kept chickens. We ate rabbit. We ate squirrel. It was a part of our stable diet, living in the country. In the woods, as some referred to. Say, we were country, we lived in the sticks. But this area provided all we fishing. We always called that the reservoir, right across the street. And it's got that trench that goes right through that creek, goes all the way over to Taylor's Park, who was named after John S. Taylor. But as we grew up, the best that I can recollect, we spent before we moved out to what is known as Eagle Lake Park, Taylor's estate, I think I lived in Baskin for about 4 years straight before Dad. Dad was working for the Taylors back then, but finally the whole family moved out there. One thing about being out there as a young man, you had chores, you were responsible, you were held accountable. There were things you had to do before you go to school. You were taught things you had to do at home. Being a close-knit family. And our family was the Hancocks, the Carters, and the Taylors. Those were our families. During the time we lived out there, living that far out in the suburbs or in rural areas, we didn't have a mailbox. We had to come to the post office during delivery, Largo, Florida. Buses didn't run out there to pick us up to take us to school. Our dad had to take us to school. There were only 2 elementary schools for blacks in Pinellas County at that time. One was Curtis. The other one was Williams Elementary. They were in Clearwater. Very little is documented about Williams Elementary, but there's a little bit more about Curtis Elementary. At that time, there was only 2 high schools in Pinellas County for blacks. Gibbs was one. Pinellas High School was the other one. It is now known as Clearwater Comp on Palmetto, right across from the softball diamond. But as I say, they didn't have buses, so Dad had to pick us up and take us to school, had to go pick us up and bring us back home. Prior to going to school, there were things we had to do. First of all, get breakfast. Grits, egg, toast, bacon. We lived in a grove of orange juice, grapefruit juice. We had to milk the cow 8 days a week. And twice on Sundays. But those were things we had to do. It wasn't, will you do this? You will do this. I wrote some notes, but I'm not following too much on. As I said, this whole area consists of palmettos, pine trees, oak trees, rattlesnakes, moccasin, rat snakes, black snakes, green snakes. But we learned to maneuver around all this stuff. It didn't stop us. And I just thank God for the opportunity to have grown up like that. God put people in your place in times like that when you can't help yourself. Another thing we done, we were caretakers. We were caretakers. Even though we lived on the Tellis estate, they provided a home for us out there. And I could hardly wait till Christmas time got there, because I knew I was going to get some Christmas presents. I still accept Christmas presents, by the way. Okay. They would buy for the entire family. My mom would cook the best biscuits in the world. My mom had a recipe for biscuits that would melt in your mouth. My dad cared for everything out there. We cared for the fruit trees. We cared for the cattle. And we had a lot of cattle out there. And our job growing up as kids, as we got to a certain age, my oldest brother and I, we had to break the horses. Yeah, I'm a real black cowboy. I'll never forget the first day they were cutting steers out, branding. That's what we done. We didn't have a squeeze chute so you can squeeze the cattle in and lock them in tight so they can't move. We had to lasso them and manhandle them. There were about 4 or 5 of us out there. We'd lasso them. We have a pole in the middle. We'd snug them up to the pole, pull them down, and we'd lay them down and do the branding. The brand was Black Diamond. Some more history about Largo, right at the corner of Missouri Avenue and Seminole Boulevard, Pinellas Central Park, was the biggest fruit packing house in Pinellas County, Johnny's Taylor Fruit Packing. This whole area was covered with fruit trees. If you look at Ridge Road there, that street between Almaton, that was owned by John S. Taylor, where that trailer park is. And they own properties all over the place. Searstown, that area there. Anybody was here when Sunshine Mall used to be here? Anybody else was here? Yeah. But as I said, we took care of the cattle. And it was our job as kids growing up to do that. Other kids would get out of school and go to basketball games, football games. I got out of school to go to work. My grandpa used to say, work never killed nobody. I'm still here. As we took care of the cattle, like I say, our job was to break the quarter horses, the cattle horses. My dad was the best cowboy I ever met. My dad was my hero. He was my mentor. And he taught us responsibility, respect, and all those good qualities that a real man should have. A man that takes care and provides for his family. As I got married, I said today, I said, Dad, we got 2 children, my wife and I, son and a daughter. I said, how in the world did you survive with 8 of us? I can't make it with 2. But we learned to work hard, an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. And that's a vital thing in our life. And it was hard back in those days. Time was tough. And the fruit industry was all that black folks had. That was the industry around here. And had fruit pickers, and we cultivated the grow. We done the trimming and all that stuff. But one thing about living in the Grove, you can have navel oranges, temple oranges, honey murcot, tangelos, tangerines. Brother-in-law, help me out back there. You a fruit picker. Did I name them all? Oh, don't leave the grapefruit out. But we lived in an environment where we could, you know, people say, I've never picked an orange before. I say, with my blessing, go at it. But when we moved out to Taylor's estate, that's where I grew up until I stayed out there until I went to the Marine Corps. Stayed in the Marine Corps for 4 years. From 1964 to 68, I spent 29 months in Vietnam on the front lines. When I got back home, the Carters, the Hancocks, all the kids, they were there still waiting. They embraced me like they have always embraced the family. And I wouldn't give up anything for, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. When you grow up in a rural area, you don't have a lot of things you can do, a lot of places to go. You made your own fun. We made our own toys. Because we ate in the house, you can't buy too many toys for everybody. We made our own toys. The only thing I never wanted when I was out at the Taylors out there was roller skates. Because it was a dirt road back then. So I never learned how to skate, okay? One of the main things I think, as I said, my brother got killed riding his favorite horse. The big lake on the north property was where he got killed. He got drowned in the lake. But, you know, I got through that. But he was doing what he wanted to do. The first horse he ever broke was the one that he got killed on. The horse's name was Slim. And my favorite horse name was Steve. He was a stallion. He strut. But life has been good. I got out the Marine Corps, still living in, all this is happening right here in this area. Got out the Marine Corps, and my wife and I grew up together from this high. From elementary school through high school through college. And we never really said we were dating. In fact, she was wearing my high school class ring around her neck. When I got to go in the military, I took it from her. I said, I want my ring back, because I might not be back. But after 4 years, I got back. I spent the entire 4 years in Asia. When I got back, so many changes had happened in this area. Almonton was extended, and other roads had been put in. I felt like a stranger at home. But the growth here is miraculous from the time we were born. And there's been a lot of good things happen, but you know what's still saying? There's always room for improvement. But my dad used to tell me, say, son, I'm going to tell you something. Always remember this. It's all right to give out, but don't never give up. That sticks in my mind all the time. Because there are going to be many obstacles in life. Things not going to always go the way we want it. But I'm so privileged to be standing here today just sharing a little bit about rural area, Pinellas County. And every time I drive through here, my wife says, look at the palmettos. Look at the pine trees. Does that remind us of home or what? I think Roger was the first one to go, what school? Oak Grove. Oak Grove. He was the first black to go to Oak Grove. You were the first one to attend Ridgecrest Elementary. Because we were all black schools at that time. No water? Yeah, I mentioned there was no water. She can't forget that water. No water. Yes, but
Jars of water to school.
yeah. But times, are good now. Even though we're going through a crisis and everybody's going through the same thing. But I can remember as a youth, well, a young kid, even to go downtown Largo to the doctor. I can remember a doctor named Dr. Dew. Remember Dr. Dew? See that? Remember Dr. Dew? I think one was named Dr. Rocco. Yeah. Osteen's grocery store. At the corner of 4th Street used to be Pop. We call it Pop's grocery store. And I love the ice house. They give you a chip of ice to cool your tongue. And the post office used to be down there on the left-hand side if you're going out of town. And the fish market used to be right there where the feed store. We call it feed store. And it used to be a fish market right across the street from it. And it was so good when we didn't have money, we could get credit. Pop would give us credit to get foods we need. But boy, when we got out to the Tellis, we get a beef, a hog, we do our own beef, our own hog. And the Tellis owned about a 12,000 acre ranch up at Inverness, Lucanto. Every summer, we'd load the horses up in the trailer, we'd trail them up to Lucanto, and we'd go out in the woods and round up all the cattle. And it'd be a day ride just to get in the woods to get to the cattle. We would round them out, sort them out, brand them, cut some out for the market, and so forth. That's what we done. But we used to look forward to that. Bale hay, the old-fashioned way, the new hay bales now, they throw it on the truck. I used to throw it up by hand all day long, throw bale hay. And then once you got it to the barn, you had to pitch it up in the barn and pack it up in the loft. It's still there. We loved the whole hay loft. That's our little place where we'd play, along with the rat snakes. And spiders. And we knew people, and I was thinking about during the time when Keene Road didn't go all the way through. It turned where it says Mcmullins Road. That's where Keene would turn. And Dad and said we should run cattle out there to Starkey Road, Starkey Ranch, which were good friends to the Taylors. And I think they put that ranch out there on 54, Starkey and 54 up there in Hudson. Yes. But we used to round up cattle together. So we were busy. But that's the way it was in rural Pinellas County back then.
What year are you talking about?
I'm talking, let's see, I had to be about 16.
Uh-oh. You're going to give your age away.
Well, I'll be 67 in January if I live to see it. My dad and our birthdays on the same day, January 30th. We did celebrate. I used to say, I said, Dad, how'd you do that? He said, when you get as old as I am, I'll tell you. We didn't have to worry about anything. I'll tell you a story. When the bus started to pick us up and take us to school, the Taylor's house, the big house, you see it right out front. Anybody pass by the estate, Taylor State? See that big house out front? Well, the bus used to pick us up out there on Keene Road. We told everybody we lived in the big house. They thought we were rich. Oh, yeah. Where y'all live? Right there. We walked real slow to the bus got out of sight, then we go on back there to our house. They thought we were wealthy. We didn't have a pot in our window, but they thought we were wealthy. But I hope that's giving some idea of what rural area was like in those days, where family had to take care of family. It's amazing, even we were forced to go to the church. Oh, yeah. We were forced to go to church. That's a humane punishment for somebody who don't like church. The only way we didn't go to church, we had to be sick. Now, there's 2 degrees of being sick. You can't be sick and walking around. You got to be sick and in bed. That's the only way you don't go to church. And our entire church consists of families with 8 or more children. I'm going to put my wife on the spot. Honey, how many was in your family? How many was it? 15. 15 in her family, 15 siblings. You know why that happened, y'all? They didn't have TV. But there were many families back then. You had to have your own football team to survive. But throughout all that, we still made it, you know. And I'm glad we can talk about it and laugh about it and share it. I've about done my spiel. Anybody got anything to help me with? And the Mcmullins. I mentioned the Mcmullins, yes.
Jim wants me to share the story about Jimmy Lee and my brother.
Oh, yes. Yes, do that. Because they grew up, they're right down the street from us, yes. And their son built our first playhouse.
Yeah.
Sure did. And could play piano. Ooh. Yes.
How old's Kenny?
Well, Kenny's 4 years older than you are, I believe.
Okay, he was closer to the brother. My brother would have been, yes. We all had nicknames, by the way. My oldest sister, we call her Sookie. And her name's Jimmy Lee, but we call her Sookie. But it's Ruth now. Yeah, that's what Kenny. It's Ruth now. And Mary, we call her Murdoch. Roger, we call Lollilo. My nickname's Penn. And Ricky, just Ricky. Diane was called Lucy. Christine, we called Christine. I think she's the only one that didn't have Chris, yes. She lives in San Diego, so she can't be here. And Diane is in Atlanta, Georgia. But we all had nicknames. And you heard those saying, you spare the rod, you ruin the child. Well, our parents did not spare the rod. They said what they meant, and they meant what they said. But all in all, I have no complaints. I don't think any of us do. They say if they give you lemons, make lemonade, right? Yes.
Can you tell us more about your mom and dad and how they got here and what about their families?
All right. Dad came from Clayton, Alabama. He came down as a young man. His mother died shortly after he was born. And his oldest sister raised him, which was down here. I don't know when she got down here. And she lived in Dansville. So she raised him until he got of age. And then he married my mom in 1923. And they were both married to the day they passed. And they passed in 04. My dad passed on May the 11th in 2004. My mother passed on August the 11th, 2004. August 11th was her birthday. So I said to myself, you know, you could moan stuff like I said, look, the good Lord brought her here on the 11th of August, and he took her home on the 11th of August, on their 81st birthday. Both were 81. But I tell you what, we were family oriented, and everything we done was based on family. When they didn't have, we didn't know it, because they took care of the kids first. My mom could take a chicken and feed 15 people off of one chicken. We were so blessed until back in those days when my dad would kill a hog or we get beef and stuff like that. We would bring it to some of the folks here in Baskin that didn't have. We would share it. And I think that's some of our blessings now, why sometimes you got to give in order to receive. It's more better to give than to receive. My parents were giving people, giving folks. They love to give, love to share. The Taylors played a major, major part in our lives. I can't put enough emphasis on that, how they impact our life. When Dr. Carter, when our kids couldn't go to the doctor, he'd take all the kids, give us shots and all that kind of stuff. He done it until I got too grown. He said, Pen, you ain't no baby no more. You got to go somewhere else.
I'll tell you how close we were growing up. 'Cause we were really very rural.
Yes.
And they were our neighbors.
Yeah,
They,
exactly.
we get home from school and we, back and forth. But I'll never forget, Roger and I are the same age.
Yes.
And when it came time to go to elementary school,
Yes.
we talked about, I remember going to my mother and asking her, we're going to be taking Roger to school. And Mom had to explain to me that Roger was going to a different school
Yes.
than me.
Uh-huh.
And that was so foreign to me. I could not understand why, because we had grown up, we had played together, why he was one of the ones going, I was one of the other. And that was, but that was how they were friends, neighbors, and it was just, that was how it was, and it was wonderful.
We didn't know what black and white was.
No, we all depended on each other, that's what we did.
We were family. There was no. I experienced more trouble with black and white when I was in the military on a combat mission. I'm in the military, patriotic, volunteered to serve, and in combat in Vietnam, I experienced my first taste of black and white. But I'm still here smiling.
You came back in 1968, you said?
I came back in '68, yes.
And in that time, 4 years you were gone.
It had changed tremendously.
Because I moved here in
Yes.
73.
Okay, yes.
And it's really not because there's differences,
Mhm.
like Largo Mall used to be
Woods and Grove, yes. Hmm.
How did that change happen so quick? Ohio moved here.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Yeah, that's a good thing, yes.
Your parents must have valued education a lot. They sound like, can you sort of expound on that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, when we were all kids, Dad say, I want to see all my kids get an education. He said, I just want to live to see that happen. That was his dream. And let's see, Rick, school teacher, Diane, school teacher, nurse, my older sister, a nurse, Diane, the teacher, yes. And I'm one of those guys that can do it all. The master of none, wear many hats. 18-year roofer, worked for the school district for 25 years, manager of the plumbing, the boilers, the irrigation, and the gas. I took care of all the schools in Pinellas County.
He had to do all that.
All that rest on my shoulder. I was on call around the clock. It's kind of hard to, if you got a water main that's broken, the school shut down, to relocate 1,000 kids. So they didn't care what and how much time it took. The school had to be online for the next day. So that's what I've done for 25 years. Yesterday, my hair used to be black. That's yesterday now. But it was, and it was challenging. I love a challenge still. And it keeps my head kind of stable. I suffer from PTSD. But I'm on medication for it, and my wife says, he forgot to take his medication. Sometime I go off the deep end. But when my brain is working on something else, I don't think about other things. Any more questions? I'd like to question. Any other questions?
Yeah, what went first? Did the cattle get sold off first, or the citrus?
I think the citrus started to deplete first, didn't it? The freeze. We had that freeze. Yeah, that freeze. That big freeze came through here, and it hurt the citrus industry. Real big time. Big time. It put a lot of small citrus people out of business. Well, it was December freeze, wasn't it? I can't remember. What was it called? The December freeze of 1962? 62, wasn't it? 61, 60, yeah. I tell you, memory's not the whole thing I got, but I know it's in the early 60s. That freeze came through. We had ice hanging off the tree. In fact, I remember going down in the pasture that way. Now, ice was crunch. where the cattle slobber and stuff like that, icicle was hanging on it. It was cold. That might be, I hope you ain't got a weak stomach, but as the cows drew, ice was hanging on it. And we'd go down and make sure the cattle made it all right, yes.
It killed all the Australian pines.
Oh, yes, it killed a lot of Australian pines, yes. Yeah.
Was it the county fair or state fair? It used to be on the corner of
That was a county fair.
Was that the county fair?
Its question was that a county or state fair on the corner of Missouri and Seminole? That was Pinellas County Fair.
Yeah.
We used to look forward to seeing that. We used to look forward
You
to.
used to go to the show in Largo, the theater,
No,
the movie theater.
no. We weren't at the movie theater at Largo back then.
Yeah.
We couldn't go. We weren't allowed to go.
I wondered.
Yeah, no. Places we had to go in the back door. Yes, we couldn't be served at the front counter. I mean, we had to go to the back door. I forgot to expand on that a little bit. Yes, we weren't allowed to go to sit at the counter and order a hamburger or a drink. They would have a little window in the back. And they'd hand you stuff out the window. Yes. Yeah.
What was it like when those segregated practices started to change?
What was it like when those segregated practices started to change?
Scary.
I tell you what I done. When they passed it,
Sure.
listen at this. When they passed it, my wife today, which wasn't my wife at that time, we had a 1952 Chevrolet. We got in that 52 Chevrolet, the floorboards were out of it. It's a wonder we can get carbon monoxide, but the floorboards out of it. We said, we're going to the drive-in theater on Gulfster Bay. Used to be a Gulfster Bay drive-in theater out there. We got in that car, real brave and real strong. We drove up to the window to get a ticket. She says, I can't stop you from coming in, but I have no protection for you.
Yeah.
We have no protection for you. My sister-in-law was back there, my brother-in-law. We were in the car. And Bill and Betty Bergman, the six of us in that little car, like sardine. But they say, we don't have any protection for you.
Did you go in?
Of course. We didn't get out of the car. We went in. My dad said, son, don't be no fool, you know. But we did. I would venture we were the first blacks to go in Gulfster Bay Drive-In.
But nobody bothered you?
I don't even know we were there. You know.
Did you say? You remember that?
Didn't see the movie. That was our movie. Told the lady, don't ask to go to the restroom, because we ain't taking you. Yeah.
What has kept you from being bitter?
What have kept me from being bitter? That's a real good question. What has kept me from being bitter? My dad taught us by attitude, by being who you are. Don't let people mold you into what they want you to be. Be positive in the way you think. Stay around positive people. Positive people.
I can answer. What kept me going was being with the Taylors.
That's what I'm saying. Being around good people.
They were family. And I said, well, they're all not that way. Some are good people. And they're the ones that let us know that there are some good people, white people. We love them. We love them, still do. And they're still our family.
That's right.
And I let my kids know, too, every time we drive by. And I take them by the place. This is where we were raised. Yeah, you grew up there. We grew there. That's home. That's all I knew. And I was born and raised there, so that was the only home I knew. And they're the only people, family, that I knew.
Dad never taught hatred. It wasn't in his DNA. Never, ever belittle anyone. Never, ever. And, you know, I instilled that in my children. In fact, my first grand, my pride and joy, that's now 23. I used to question about what did she do in school. She said, I done this, I done that, I done this, I done that. I said, what else? I went to the cafeteria and I had pizza, French fries. That's all she ever ate. You ask her, pizza, French fries. I said, what else you do? I played with my friends. She never did say Hispanic, white, black, green, blue, and I admired that. I played with my friends. Friends don't have color. Even my youngest grandson, he goes to school. I said, "What'd you do today?" He goes through the whole spiel, and I played with my friends. I think that's so important that we as parents should instill to teach that hatred is a sin, is a disease. We don't have any control of what God has made us to be, and we got to accept each other for who we are. Yes.
Your grandfather, you mentioned your grandfather. Did he live down here also?
Yes, he did. In fact, they named a street after him, Williams Drive in Baskin. The first family that owned that property there. My grandpa was a tall, lean man. White hair, white as snow. And my other nickname, Grandma called me Pen. But to Grandpa, my name was Mike. Mike. Grandpa had to give me his own nickname. It was Mike. And you're talking a man full of wisdom. Oh, my words. He would walk down, his name was Lee Williams. He'd take me, I think I was his favorite. He'd take me by the hand as he strut, holding my hand with a cane in the other one, going to Joel Osteen, and he said, "This is my grandson, Mike." I stick my chest out. I'm Grandpa's favorite. Yeah, what a man. That white hair, and I'd just play in his hair all the time. All the time. Spiritual man, good-hearted man. With that kind of attitude that it'll work out, things will be all right. Just hang in there anyway. I think Roger was spoiled when I was in... I think Roger was more or less spoiled, and then Ricky is more spoiled than he is. Dad and them got more lenient towards punishment. They do things, I say, "Dad, you're not going to let them get away with that." You know what he say? "Son, times has changed." I said, "People were telling you to stay off us, but they didn't change you then." But time has changed. The things that we used to, that our parents do to us, we get more lenient. And I think we need to go back and look what our kids are doing now. I think we give them too much leeway. We got kids telling parents what to do. And a lot of time we can't be our children's best friend. They're supposed to be our children. Children first. As they get grown, get on their own, then they can be our friend. But they still be our children, But my grandpa was something. He would do some stuff. My grandpa could grab a spark plug on a car and hold it. Anybody ever touch a spark plug on a car? You don't want to do it. It's just like sticking your finger in that receptacle right there. He would grab that spark plug. He said, "Mike, come here. Come here." And I don't know what he's holding. He said, "Let me show you something." I'd lean over and he'd touch me on the ear and about knock me out. He thought that was the funniest thing in the world. Then he said, "Mike, come here, come here." "What, Grandpa?" Had a sense of humor. Got to have a sense of humor. If you take everything to heart, you have high blood pressure, you have strokes, and laughter is the best thing in the world. Yes?
How many people actually worked on the ranch? And my second question is, how far are we from Clearwater Beach or the beach areas?
How many people worked on the ranch, and how far we were away from Clearwater Beach? Have you ever been on Keene Road? Yeah. Okay. Just picture Keene Road. That's where the ranch was, on Keene Road. And the beach from there. Because we got a lot more ways to get there now than we used to have. I'd say, maybe 7 miles at the most. I'd say 7 or 8 miles. Yes.
Probably were 30 years from the beach, weren't you?
I didn't hear.
30 years from the beach?
30 years from the beach? Yeah. I'm glad you brought beach up. We could not go on the beach. We weren't allowed to go on the beach. There was one little area on Courtney Campbell Causeway on the left-hand side. Picture the left-hand side of how many places you can get on the beach with all the rocks.
On the north side.
On the north side. They'd be on the left-hand side going. On the north side, there was a little old road that curved in there and curved way back in the woods, and there was an opening to the water about as wide from there to the wall that we all scurried out there to get in the salt water.
Back where the Christian College is now?
Right there.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, I remember that. Cooper Bayou.
Cooper Bayou. We didn't go to the beach, we went to Cooper Bayou.
Hundreds of blacks.
Yeah.
Here. Yes.
Uh-huh. That's where we went to the beach.
That wasn't real good swimming either. A lot of
It was a mud hole, a lot of shell and stuff out there. Yeah. But we had a good time. Yeah. But that's the way the days were back then. But we didn't let it come out with a bitter attitude, mad at the world or nothing like that. That was the way things was. That's the way it was.
Where did you graduate from high school?
The question was, where did I graduate from high school? Pinellas High School. It was the only high school in this area for blacks.
And that's the one that's up in Clearwater?
That's the one, yes, the one in Clearwater. And before it was there, anybody remember Stone Buick? Pinellas High School used to be south of Stone Buick. Old wooden, weather-beaten building, no paint on it.
Old wooden house.
Old wooden building. And just south of that was Williams Elementary. So the high school was here, Williams Elementary was there. And they finally built the high school on Palmetto. I think it was put there in 55 or 56. Because my oldest sister was one of the first ones that graduated from the new high school, which we call the new high school now. All the kids from Oakhurst up to Tarpon Spring went to Pinellas High School here.
And there was no transportation. You had to figure out a way to get there.
Earlier. Until the bus route started to go out in the rural area and started to pick us up.
2 buses.
2 buses, yes. 2 buses to pick up this whole community. Mm-hmm.
How large was the graduating class?
My graduation class was about 64. That was in 1962.
My sister's was 32.
My wife graduated the year behind me, 63. How many was in your class? He graduated from Largo High.
Bunch of them.
A bunch of them. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a bunch of them. You don't have to go to a stadium to graduate now. You all have more graduating than we had in our whole school. Any other questions? Yes.
If you needed to have surgery,
Hmm.
did you go then to Morton Plant, or what happened before Morton Plant?
They had a place in the basement at Morton Plant, yes.
We had babies and everything.
In the basement at Morton Plant. Yeah, the babies were in the basement too, yes. In the basement at Morton Plant. Yes.
What would Thanksgiving be like at your house?
Oh my goodness. I thought you'd never ask. Let me tell you about Thanksgiving.
What's the question?
What was Thanksgiving like at our house? We started making preparation about 3 days before Thanksgiving. Sweet potato pies, coconut cakes, pound cakes, huge turkeys, chickens, collard greens, chitlins. Anybody don't know what chitlins are? Anybody don't know what chitlins are? We had hogs. We don't throw chitlin away. Mustard greens, turnips, macaroni and cheese, dressing, cranberry sauce. Am I leaving anything out?
Biscuits.
Biscuit. Oh, the main thing, biscuits, yes.
Did you have crackers, cornbread?
Oh, yes, cornbread. And the whole family would gather. The whole family would gather, and you're talking about a good time. We'd laugh, we'd eat, we'd laugh, and then we'd laugh and we'd eat. But we all would be there, the whole family. That was one of our major
How many
families.
people would you guess would be there?
15? Well, with the grandkids and all of that, the last one. I say about 20, 25. Uh-huh. And we'd cook enough to accommodate all that, and they'd pack up and take what's left home. Yeah, yes.
And I know your mother must have been exhausted, but before she cooked for her family, she'd be at the crack of dawn helping my grandma.
Cook for her grandma, yes. She done all their cooking, right. Yes.
She was a cook extraordinary.
Wonderful cook, yes. I often said I wish I'd paid more attention to her. I'd be Emerald Willie on TV. She could cook, and I didn't realize it until it was too late. I said, I should have been over her shoulder, looking at the way she critiqued everything, and everything had to be just right.
No recipes. No recipes.
No recipe. If she cut up potatoes, every cube would be identical, and she didn't run it through a machine. Everything had to be just right.
She would make a cake. She had the 1, 2, 3 cake. And then I saw one up so high. I said, well, Mom, what is that? She said the 4, 5, 6.
But I tell you what, all in all, we were surrounded around beautiful people all our life. Even though other stuff was going on around us, we didn't let it impact the way we live. You know, we were always growing up to be concerned about other folks. I think that's our gift.
And I have to say to the Taylors, they protected us. They really did. They really did see after us. And when the young ones, Roger, when they went to Oak Grove, Mr. Taylor made sure that they didn't have any problems. I don't know if you knew that or not. Mm-hmm. They had security. I know they probably didn't know. Mm-hmm.
But we didn't have problems because everybody knew the Taylors, and they knew we knew the Taylors. Yeah, absolutely. But again, yes.
Yeah, I did an interview with your dad. He mentioned that you all were the first blacks to have a refrigerator because
that's what I was talking about. Remember I said we had ice box, not refrigerator? Because we didn't have electricity in Baskin. When we moved out there, Mr. Taylor bought us a refrigerator. Boy, we were picking at high cotton then. But Mr. Taylor bought our first refrigerator. I could not figure out how you open that door and that thing stayed cold. Dad, you say, boy, if you don't shut that door, letting all that cool air out. I was trying to see what made it tick. Yes. Uh-huh.
The TV.
We finally got our first TV. It was about that big around. I can remember some of the Sky King. Howdy doody. And we'd be just like this. Get your head out of the way so I can see with 8 of us, all our heads there.
We'd invite the neighbors in to watch the test pattern.
We didn't have neighbors.
These were our neighbors. We'd have to call our neighbors from over here to go out there, you know. And we didn't have telephone. We did not have telephone. No. I don't know how we get along without them, you know. We didn't have telephone. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
How was it sleeping, like during the heat?
How was it sleeping? Oh, that's a good question. How did we sleep with all the heat in Florida? Because there wasn't no air conditioning. We didn't have ceiling fans. And we just barely got screens over the doors. Because when we were here in Baskin, the window either go up or down with no screens. We couldn't afford screens. So the windows would be up all night. When it rained, we'd have to let the window down. And the roof was made out of tin. You know the tin sheeting? I can remember laying in bed looking up, counting the stars. I couldn't figure out why it didn't rain in there. But the heat, I mean, I guess you get accustomed to your environment. I mean, You,
hotter then than it is now, or I mean,
it's always been hot in Florida. But being children, you don't know as much as an adult would.
But Dad said they had a front door and the back door.
Open it and let it draft. Yeah. But we didn't have electric fans or anything like that. And you know, I didn't really think about it. You know, when we were growing up, I didn't think about, Dad, you ought to get a fan. There was more important things a family needed than think about getting a fan to blow air. Dad was trying to get something to fill our tummies. Mm-hmm.
What we did next door.
Next door, yeah.
Daddy would tell us to, or sometimes he'd bring us a wet washcloth, and you just kind of rinse yourself down.
Yeah.
You know. And of course, you had no covers. Didn't need any covers. But yeah, you'd feel a little cooler with a little dampness. You know.
I tell you, before we added on to the house that we had at Taylor's, okay, it was my older brother and myself, Mary, Christine, and my older sister Ruth. So my mom and dad had a bedroom. My older sister had her own bedroom. Mary and Chris was on one wall, and my other brother and I were on the other wall in the same room. That room was so tight till if I want to get on my knees and say my prayers, I have to turn sideways and do it.
I remember the mosquitoes were bad.
Oh, yes.
But
and there was no seams too.
My mother, through the night, she'd cut the light on, and all of a sudden, pow, she's hitting you. Killing mosquitoes. Taking care of her kids. You know.
But it really, like I say, it was a way of life. We didn't say, I got to get out of this place, you know. We accepted that. I mean, where do you go? Where do you go?
They did have a lot of mosquitoes on it.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. A lot of mosquitoes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Oh, you guys are making this easy, asking me questions. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I asked Mr. Starkey one time, I never got a real good answer. Major cattle drive going north up to Flatwoods area and further. What route did you take?
Okay, I was young during those days when they were doing that, but I know the tail would sometime go through Keene Road where it turns off, where it's a Mcmullins now. They would drive cattle through those pad meadows down to Starkey's ranch, and they'd do back and forth that from time to time. We'd help him round up, but I'm not familiar with that particular.
When you went through northern Pinellas County, where was you going up?
Oh, okay. The cattle was up there in, Pinellas County. No, it's in Pasco. Anclote River Ranch, yes. Yes.
How did you go? 19 wasn't there, right?
Oh, yeah. Two-lane highway. 2 lane, all the way. Yeah, 2 lane, all the way, yes. It went up 19, yes. And during the rainy season, there were some areas on US 19 where the water would cross. And you had to go through a wide area. You had to just aim at the center line and try to stay on the road and go across. Yeah.
Did you drive the cattle? I mean, in a vehicle, or did the cattle go?
No, the horses that we would carry, yes. We carried the horses from ranch to ranch.
Okay.
Yeah, to help them with their round up, and they'd help us with
You
it.
didn't move the cattle?
No, we didn't move the cattle up there. No. Yeah.
You talked about one time in Largo, on Elmerton Road, they had the cattle area, the numbers and so forth, and they drove cattle. It must have been his dad bought the land up north. They drove cattle up there from Pinellas County.
I'm not familiar with that. I'm not familiar with that one. The only north cattle we had was on Keene Road, just you past Nurse. We had a ranch some cattle up there on the right-hand side that we used to work. And that whole area behind Oak Grove, it used to be cattle back behind the Oak Grove Elementary School. Used to be cattle back in that area. But that was considered north of the estate that we took care of. Yeah. Yes, sir.
How did your dad meet Mr. Taylor? How did you get the position with him?
I'm not really sure, but I can remember him telling us.
Working at a nursery.
He worked at a nursery in Seminole. He was working at the nursery, making 50 cents a dollar a day. In some kind of way, he came in contact. I don't know exactly, I can't give all particulars. And he said, Jesse, why don't you come work for me? So, and at that time, when that first happened, we were still living out here in Baskin. We were still in Baskin. And he said, won't you come work for me? And I said, one thing led to another, and he started to work out there, but back and forth. And then, yeah, on 8th Avenue, if you guys know where 8th Avenue and Ridge Road, he owned all that property there. That was all fruit groves. And we had some people, my brother-in-law, people lived out there on the grove. His parents actually worked the grove. And I think that's how the first contact was made. And from that, it kept going, kept going, kept going. Eventually, we did move out on Taylor's property. And the house that's out there now that you can see when you walk on the park wasn't the first house that we moved into. The first house was smaller than the one you see out there. And Mama kept having babies, so we had to spread out. And then they put us a bigger house in. And then we added on to that house, but when I walk through it now, it still looks so small for 8 people, you know. 8 children plus mom and dad, 10.
Just want to make this comment. As far as the Taylors being connected to your grandmother, I was told, I did some orientation.
Yeah, she does some stuff.
And I was told that Mr. Taylor was cognizant the area where your grandmother lived, Live Oak.
Live Oak, yes.
And he was able to get some family members, your grandmother.
My grandmama, yes.
And I think she had 4 kids at the time.
Right.
When she came to the area, your mama being one of those.
Right.
And I think that was one of the connections by your dad and marrying one of those children.
It could very well be, yes. Right. Like I said, I didn't know all the particulars about that, you know. But yes, but that's how we started getting into the family here, you know, through that.
Yeah, it wasn't my mother though. She was born. My mother was born here. Yeah.
But that's how the family started getting with the Tills, yes.
There were 13 of them.
Yeah, 13 on my mom's side. That's big families, big families. And I think now on my mom's side, there's none living. None living now. They all passed, yes. On my dad's side, I have one brother left that lives in Utica, New York.
He has.
One brother left on my dad's side. Yeah, but we got relatives all over the place, and we don't know each other because you lose contact. Yeah. All right. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Our kids and cousins that have their cousins and stuff, they're not. Our kids and cousins that have their cousins.
Yes, yes, they're doing that. Yeah, that's one good thing. I see they're contacting. They can find out where they are and what they're doing.
You haven't talked to them in years.
Yes, yeah. My son is heavy into that. You know, I don't even turn the computer on. I'm an old dinosaur. I'm a dying breed. You know. No, I'm not. You don't get into it either. All right. Well, misery loves company, right? All right. I know how to turn my phone on and off, how to answer a call. And I know how to hang up, too. All right. You all have been so nice. I appreciate the questions. I don't want to leave any other questions about growing up in rural area, Baskin and Danville. And thank you, sister-in-law, for helping me with some of that knowledge there. Yeah. Thank you.